Good evening, this is Brass Tacks. I'm Zakir Jacob. The fact that the Taliban's biggest benefactors were the Pakistani state and the ISI, that was a fact that was very well known. But now you have a sitting minister, a minister in the federal government of Imran Khan, openly admitting on national television that the Pakistani government is the biggest protector of the Taliban and that the Taliban is the biggest custodian of the Pakistani state. The question is not for the Pakistani state or for the Taliban. That, like I said, is an open secret. The question, though, is how long will the West, and in particular the United States, turn a blind eye to this? After all, even now, even today, even after the American pullout of Afghanistan, there are billions of dollars of aid that America still gives to Pakistan. The question is, and this is what we'll debate on Brass Tacks tonight, is it time to call out these blatant double standards?
कई ये तालिबान लीडर जो टॉप हैं वो पैदा पाकिस्तान में हुए, पढ़े पाकिस्तान में। इसमें तो पाकिस्तान की खिदमात हैं कि इनको हमने तालीम दी और अब भी कई पढ़ रहे होंगे।
So here you have a sitting Pakistani minister saying, we are the custodians of the Taliban. We gave them food, we gave them education, we gave them shelter. The question, though, is for the United States, is for the White House. Why is it? Why does the United States continue to protect Pakistan? Is it to counterweigh India? This, of course, was during the Cold War. This is a part of history where India was more inclined towards the USSR and Pakistan was to the United States. Is it because Pakistan is a critical ally on the war on terror, but the war on terror, which began in 2001 after the 9/11 attacks, has officially come to an end now with the pullout in Afghanistan? Was it because it facilitated the invasion of Afghanistan after 9/11, the search for Osama bin Laden and the other perpetrators of the 9/11 attacks? Is it also because there are major American military assets even today inside the territory of Pakistan? Is it also that the US feels that by pressing Pakistan, it will only boost the China-Pakistan-Russia nexus? And of course, the United States is daggers drawn at the best of times with both China and Russia. So is it keeping Pakistan in sort of a balancing act, lest it go into this axis of Russia and China? Joining me on the talking point this evening, Sushant Sareen is Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation. We're also joined by Mona Alam, Pakistani journalist and political analyst. Guru Prakash Paswan is a spokesperson of the BJP, and Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, former diplomat, joining us. Sushant, I'll start with you. I mean, it's obvious. It would be a lie to say that the Americans, Joe Biden and four previous presidents did not know the double game that the Pakistanis were playing. The question is, why tolerate them?
Zakir, that's a billion-dollar or a multi-billion-dollar question. And frankly, I can see of no sensible reason, except for one maybe, which was that the supply lines ran through Pakistan. But even that was not enough for the Americans to adopt a very pusillanimous kind of an approach towards the Pakistanis. They knew right from day one what the Pakistanis were up to. They've documented it. There is evidence after evidence of the Pakistani involvement in how they were playing this double game and were being treacherous with the Americans. And yet the Americans turned a blind eye. And even today, after having lost this war, after an ignominious withdrawal, you still hear voices from Washington saying that, look, we need to remain engaged with Pakistan because of some of the reasons you have listed out. One being the China factor, and I'll come to it in just half a second. And the other one being that we'll be able to keep a closer eye and monitor terrorism much better. Now, as far as the terrorism issue is concerned, for the last 20 years, this business of being engaged with the Pakistanis, funding them, feeding the snake, if you will, has resulted in this ignominious defeat. So I don't, that the theory and the practice of that assumption has already been tested and it is failed. So
Okay.
if you want to continue to reinforcing failure, it doesn't make sense. On the China factor, again, this thing that we will keep, we'll wean away Pakistan from China. Listen, for the last 15 years, the trend has been very clear. Pakistan is now totally in the China camp.
Yeah.
China is to Pakistan today what the US was in the 50s and the 60s. If the American scholars can't see that and the American policymakers can't see that, then it's a unique kind of obtuseness where I don't know how you get through that kind of dumbness.
Sushant,
if you will.
the phrase that they use is iron brothers or iron weather friends is I think the phrase that they use. But Mona Alam, can I ask you a simple question? Here you have a sitting Pakistani minister, a member of Imran Khan's cabinet, on national television saying, "Ye Taliban to hamare hi hai, humne unko pala pocha." I mean, we are the ones who gave them education, gave them, healthcare, gave them whatever it was required. We are the custodians of the Taliban, and the rest of the world should just sit back and listen to Sheikh Rashid and do nothing about it.
Look, actually, Zaka, there are two different scenarios in, I think, which we need to look at this perspective. First is, of course, Taliban and the creation of Taliban, who created Taliban, why were they created, and Pakistan's role, of course, which has been dubious in the entire game plan. Yes, that's all a story that has been, an open secret to all of us all. So if they're referring to that particular story at that point in time, then of course the Interior Minister Sheikh Rashid is correct in having said this. But as of now, I mean, presently we do not enjoy the best of the ties with Taliban. I mean, we are pressurizing them to take action against the TTP, the Indian-funded TTP, according to Chuck Hagel only. So, I mean, we are pressurizing them for an action against this particular faction. We are not in the best of terms as we speak with the Taliban, and I think this particular statement of the Interior Minister was also in the same context, that he was actually trying to, morally pressurize the Taliban that, oh, you should remember where you've come from. So I don't think that as of now we are in the best of the relationships with them.
The irony in what you're saying, Mona, and I'll ask Ambassador Vishnu Prakash this. Take the biggest leaders of the Taliban, Akhundzada. Nobody has seen him. Nobody has heard from him. Last we heard, he was in a Pakistani jail, right? Mullah Baradar, where was he till 2018, till he was released in this deal that Donald Trump cut with the Taliban? He was inside Pakistan. Anas Haqqani is the brother of Sirajuddin Haqqani. Who is he? He's a creation of the ISI. The biggest leaders of the Taliban are all creations or protected by the Pakistani state and the ISI. And yet, Mona Alam would have us believe, and Sheikh Rashid would have us believe otherwise. Vishnu Prakash.
Well, greetings, Zaka. Pakistan is in a make-believe world, and they have quite a fertile imagination that is very well known. Mr. Rashid should be congratulated. In fact, he is a very honest person that he could not hide his glee, just as Neelam Sheikh could not hide her glee when she was on Pakistani TV and she said that the Taliban will gift Kashmir to them. Now, with this kind of a attitude and outlook, when the world knows everything, it's a worst kept secret that Taliban is a creation of Pakistan. What do you do? And yes, the US has a blind spot for Pakistan. That is quite obvious. In addition to the factors that you mentioned, the Pakistani army or the generals or the leaders still train with the Americans. In fact, as far as I know, General Bajwa has also trained in the US. And also Pakistan does the dirty work for the US from time to time. And they are always cut a slack. They always, US finds some opportune way or the other to justify, cutting slack to Pakistan. Now, that is the reality. Zaka, if we have to deal with the situation, if that is the only way that I can think of is an international stabilization force which needs to flush out the terror bases, but it will not be confined to Afghanistan. It has to also take into account the center of terrorism where the terror infrastructure obtains. And the US knows, in fact, Hillary Clinton had said
Yeah.
that Pakistan rears snakes in its backyard. But why they don't act is beyond beyond belief.
Guru Prakash Paswan, here's the problem though. The Americans very well know this. As Joe Biden said, at least 4 former presidents have borne the legacy of this war. I wouldn't put it past them that those 4 presidents did not know where the fount of this terror was. And yet, having said that, India is still engaging with the Taliban. Yes, it's a far cry from recognizing them. Yes, it's only for the first set of formal talks. And you also have the problem that if you don't talk to them, they're going to elbow, the Chinese and the Turks and the Pakistanis are simply going to elbow you out of whatever future dispensation takes shape in Afghanistan. The question is simply this. India seems to have thrown its lot, at least in this case, seems to have thrown its lot with the Americans who are not willing to push Pakistan beyond a certain point. So we are literally stuck between a rock and a hard place.
No, Zaka, we must understand that the situation is very fluid, the situation is very evolving, and we are obviously aware of the old adage that there are no permanent friends, there are no permanent enemies, but there are permanent interests. And India is competent to secure its interest. As far as the statement of the minister from Pakistan is concerned, Zaka, I think there is an additional obligation and responsibility not only on the United States but on the entire international community to examine, relook and revisit the nexus between terrorism and Pakistan. And I also raise another important question on your show tonight. Was this transaction one-sided? Was Taliban or any terror element the only beneficiary of support from Pakistan, or was Pakistan also a beneficiary of Taliban? Pakistan must answer this question today. But also, if you look at it critically, we must understand that the drug trade, the opium trade, Pakistan would have immensely benefited from it. So I think the ball is in the court of Pakistan as far as the question is concerned.
Okay.
Your question on engagement with Taliban. Like I said, the fundamental priority as of now is to evacuate our people. And to evacuate our people, we have to engage with whoever is in power. So I think there is no question of being selective in terms of engagement. But Pakistan and the international community must, through actions like FATF, like Pakistan has already paid a huge cost in terms of FATF. But how do we put Pakistan back on the axis and make them answer these difficult questions?
No, here's the real deal. The real deal is that general after general from America, who's dealt with Afghanistan firsthand, has said this, that every time there is an offensive on the other side of the Durand line in Afghanistan, all that these terrorists have to do is to seek safe haven, is to seek shelter on the other side. And after some time, after the heat blows away, they just come back to Afghanistan. This is something from David Petraeus to Stanley McChrystal to Mike Mullen. They've all said this, Mona Alam. So then, for you to turn around, then for you to turn around and say, "Oh, you are victims of terrorism. Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan is after you," it's just trying to fool people. You're trying to pull a yarn through the eyes of the international community. That's all.
Look, I think this narrative doesn't add up because everybody, even a kid, knows that in this particular region, China is a far closer ally of Pakistan than USA. And talking about USA, we are rather helping them evacuate from Afghanistan, as you all know. So, when we talk about just political statements such as this of Sheikh Rashid, he is a politician of the right. We all know. We've seen him since childhood, literally. He is a politician of the right, and so are many more like him. They do give statements which, kind of give out an impression of sympathizing with the Taliban. But then also we have those who are strong and utmost opponents of the Taliban.
No, but hang on. You can dismiss. Ma'am. You can dismiss Sheikh Rashid, as a politician of the right, loud talking, big mouth. Fair enough. Your Prime Minister 2 weeks back said what's happening in Afghanistan is Afghans have broken the shackles of slavery. What do you say to that?
Zaka, I think if he's talking about the shackles of slavery of the US, then he's right in saying so. I mean, the US and the Afghan government, the past ex-Afghan government whose president has fled away from their country and has left his people on the mercy of Taliban. I mean, I do not see what shackles of slavery weren't there that you're trying to
So
contest
US
with.
and
He was
Ghani's
in very valid
government,
point was
US
talking
and
about
Ghani
the US
government
shackles of
were
slavery.
shackles of slavery, but the Taliban is not shackles of slavery.
I'm not saying that.
Sushant
No, I'm
Sareen.
not saying that. No,
Sushant
that's
Sareen.
not true.
No, Zaka,
They may be equal
before I
shackles
come
of
to-
slavery.
Before I come to what the Taliban are not, just three very, very quick points. One, when Mona Alam says that Sheikh Rashid is a politician of the right, is Pakistan Army, which is driving the entire policy on Afghanistan, a progressive leftist organization? That's point number one. Point number two, she keeps talking about TTP, and this is one of the tropes which the Pakistanis use, that India was behind TTP. Well, if India was behind TTP, and NDS was like a auxiliary organization of the Indian intelligence services, then how come over a couple of thousand, about at least 2,000 TTP people were in Afghan prisons? Why were they in Afghan prisons? Why would my proxy organization be put in a prison in a country which is run by or has an intelligence agency which is also by proxy? So this is what does not add up from what Mona Alam is saying. And finally, Zaka, I have a big problem when you say they will elbow us out. Elbow us out of what? What is there? People are acting as though Afghanistan is like the Saudi Arabia on steroids, on gold, copper, I don't know what all. There is nothing out there. It
No,
is
no,
a
no,
bottomless pit.
hang on.
Okay, so
No.
nobody is going to
One
help
second.
us out
No,
of anything.
elbow out, and I can get Vishnu Prakash also to weigh in on
No,
this.
I would rather welcome, let them
when
go
I
and sink money out there.
no, when I mean elbow out, I don't mean Afghanistan is some repository of a great amount of minerals or resources or whatever. Some amount may be there. What I meant by elbow out was, let's be very clear-eyed about what's going on. You are now going to see an axis which has China, Russia, Turkey, and obviously because of the influence of China, some of the Central Asian states. So if India needs, and the only missing piece of that puzzle was Afghanistan. So Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, if India needs...
No, but what is this puzzle?
No, one
What
second.
is the shape
I'll tell you
of
what
the
the puzzle
puzzle?
is. No, I'll tell you what the puzzle is. So Ambassador Vishnu Prakash, if India needs connectivity projects from Chabahar through the Central Asian countries into Europe, and if these Central Asian countries are
why
simply
would
don't
they
have a
need
choice.
those
No, one second.
connectivity
One
projects,
second.
yeah?
Simply don't have a choice. But to fall in line with this nexus of China, Pakistan, Turkey, Russia, and now of course Afghanistan, then what choice does India have? I mean, it's great for the Americans to leave. They're far away. They're some 3 oceans away. We, on the other hand, have everything to pay for because we're in this region. As Atal Bihari Vajpayee said, we can't choose our neighbors. Ambassador Prakash.
Very true. We cannot choose our neighbors, and we have to deal with the situation as it obtains. I think that issue or the quest for access to the Central Asia through Chabahar port and Afghanistan will have to be put on the back burner for the time being.
Exactly.
I don't see any choice other than that. Also, the fact is that Taliban is not monolithical. Taliban, not every group of Taliban is beholden to Pakistan.
Yeah.
Taliban has also tasted the Pakistani perfidy. They have seen how Pakistan has played both sides. And you mentioned about Mullah Baradar. Other leaders also, in 2001, 2002, Taliban leaders were handed over to the US. So the Taliban understands what Pakistan is all about. They have to deal with Pakistan, but I don't think that other than say, the Haqqani group, which is completely beholden, every segment of Taliban will just toe the Pakistani line. I would even raise this. I would even observe that the outreach to India would not have had Pakistani blessings. So while
that's interesting
while
you say that.
Yes, because Pakistani influence is there, but let's not believe that Taliban will just toe the line and be only a puppet of Pakistan.
No, fair enough. I agree with you on that. There are very many contradictions within the Taliban. There are conflicts within the Taliban. Many of those folks owe allegiance much more to their clans than to any great idea of an Islamic emirate being established there. But having said that, I'll give Guru Prakash the final word. The question
Zaka,
though is
give me
what?
2 sentences.
Yeah, I will. Let Guru just finish. The problem is, yes, we are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yes, the options are few, but at least this 20-year saga that's been going on with Pakistan. I mean, Sushant said, supply chains were a big thing for the Americans. Now there are no supply chains. So now what's stopping them from sanctioning and, as Donald Rumsfeld said, bomb them back to the Stone Ages? If these terrorists are taking safe sanctuary in Pakistan, now what is the leverage that the Pakistanis have over America?
No, Zaka, it's very important for us to understand, and I was patiently listening to all the experts, and you rightly pointed out towards this nexus of China, Pakistan and Russia, but we must also keep in mind that India has also simultaneously built a consensus around Indian Ocean region, like the Quad, with Japan, India, US and Australia, both of them coming together, and we are also making ourselves assertive in terms of freedom of navigation in the Indian Ocean region as well. So we are taking leadership. But as far as the stance of US is concerned, US has to take a call on its own. But like I said, international community must revisit, rethink and relook on this nexus, and this factor must be examined, that whether Pakistan has benefited from the Taliban's relationship or not. Also, the cross-border terrorism of Pakistan, India is not the only victim. Now the victim is going to be the entire world, and the obligation and the responsibility of the international community is now to put the spotlight, to put the searchlight on Pakistan and examine and investigate
Sushant, final word, 30 seconds.
Okay, just very, very quickly. Number one, to reach Central Asia, we don't need Afghanistan. We can go through Iran. But the whole Central Asia, great riches of Central Asia is a myth. It's an El Dorado, which really I think we need to get out of. And secondly, Zaka, and most importantly, this whole concept of land connectivity to Europe, just talk to a transport economist. Just figure out how much it costs to transport by land to Europe, and you will figure out that it just doesn't make any sense. Your products, by the time they reach Europe, they will simply not be competitive. So anybody who wants to build this land connectivity and live under this kind of a dream world of their own, most welcome to it. As far as I can make out, whatever math I know and whatever transport economics I know, it just does not make any sense.
All right, we'll leave it at that. We'll see how the story plays out. There is a lot that is going to be decided, which is going to shape the future of the region, shape the future of India's diplomatic and security interests in this region over the next few weeks and months. That's a wrap. I want to move on to an investigation story that we've done here on CNN News 18. Remember, a few months back, the center had banned almost 250, in fact, more than 250 Chinese apps. This was in the wake of the Galwan clashes in the summer of 2020. But now, a year on, some of these apps have made a comeback. They are operating, but under different names. Anvit Srivastav with this exclusive. Thanks for tuning in.
भारत की जनता के डेटा की सुरक्षा पर कोई हम समझौता नहीं करेंगे.
The government had banned more than 200 Chinese mobile applications in the last 1 year to protect the data and privacy of Indian citizens. This move of the government came at a time when tensions along the LAC were simmering. These Chinese companies were banned over apprehensions of data mining and fears over their links to the Chinese government. But a year later, a CNN News 18 investigation finds that not only these Chinese apps are functioning, but many of them have registered a growth in their business. It is found that about 8 of the 60 top applications in India are Chinese operated. These companies operate by hiding their Chinese origins, listing under a new company name and hence freely available on the Play Store. So what is their modus operandi? How do these companies continue to flourish despite stringent action by the top authorities? Well, the answer is that they used smarter legal means to subvert the existing regulations. Post the Galwan clash, the concerned ministry came with a new set of rules. Under the present regulation by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, nationals of about 6 countries cannot own companies in India, and the money cannot be routed through these countries, including China. To bypass these regulations, most Chinese companies take the help of certain shell entities to route the funds. A titular Indian director helps them evade the scrutiny of authorities, and money is routed through different shell entities. But the app that the company makes is developed by the Chinese, which is eventually launched under the name of an Indian company. Experts are clearly alarmed.
This is a very unfortunate situation because when those apps were banned, at that time they were banned for unity, safety, security and sovereignty of the country. Now they have again come through the back door, so those entry points must be blocked by the government so that society, nation and economy can be saved.
So why are the Chinese so interested? There are primarily two reasons: big money and big data. Significant deal activity took place post-COVID-19 lockdown, and the year 2020 witnessed more investments in gaming than compared to the last 5 years put together. The gaming sector in India attracted an investment of about $554 million during August 2020 and January 2021. Chinese are trying to milk this booming industry in India. Here's the bit about big data. It is now established that data security is intricately linked to national security. The links of the Chinese companies with the Chinese Communist government and concerns around mining the data of Indian citizens was precisely the reason that government had cracked the whip on these Chinese entities. In the absence of any data protection regime, it has been a menace for the authorities to regulate the ever-increasing commercial activity online. And the presence of the Chinese in the payment bank, gaming world and the IT space makes it a complex web, difficult to trace for the authorities. With Anvit Srivastav, Anusha Soni for CNN News 18.